So before we start, I would like to thank SwissNext and the organizer for the fantastic initiative in this challenging time. That's really awesome and truly impressive. I would like to thank the Swiss SNSF for their very precious support, and I would like to thank you all for tuning in. I very much appreciate it. So I'm currently postdoc mobility fellow at RK Philosophical Research Center at the University of St. Andrews, where I lead a project on conceptual engineering that is entitled Reshaping the World. And that's what I will tell you a bit about today. In a nutshell, conceptual engineering is that new hot topic in philosophy that focuses on assessing and improving our conceptual toolkits. And what I'll do today in this flash talk is to give you a quick guided tour in conceptual engineering with a focus on the idea behind it, how it works, and its target in terms of objects. So let's start with the general background. The label has been coined, that's not really true, but so the story goes, by Cambridge philosopher Simon Blackburn in his book 99 in the following passage. The word philosophy carries unfortunate connotations, impractical, unworldly, weird. I suspect that all philosophers and philosophy students share that moment of silent embarrassment when someone innocently asks us what we do. I would prefer to introduce myself as doing conceptual engineering. For just as the engineer studies the structure of material things, so the philosopher studies the structure of thought. So one can then get the rationale for conceptual engineering by expanding a bit on this very inceptive idea as follows. Concepts basically are a privileged tool to navigate the world. We use them all the time when we think and talk about anything in the world or to coordinate with each other and so on. On that basis, the next claim to make is that the quality of our conceptual toolkits somehow crucially determines the quality of our cognitive activities. So that, if you wish a slogan, better concepts leads to better cognitive activities. A paradigmatic case for this is that of Lynn Farley and the Working Women United. I mean, what they did when they coined the concept of sexual harassment is that they enabled all of these victims to make sense of their offensive experiences in hostile work environment and speak out against that which would have remained being silenced otherwise. That's basically the idea. Better concepts, better cognitive abilities and behaviors. An example like this are all around us every day. Take, for example, the concept of race, the concept of planet in astronomy, the concept of milk in the case of vegan product, the concept of fake news, of rape, of social distancing and tracing app in the current days, of marriage, of intelligence, and so on. I guess you get the picture now. Against this background, conceptual engineering can be seen as an ameliorative project, which aims to innovate, revise, or replace our conceptual toolkits when these are found to be somehow defective or even just improvable. But how does that work? That's the next step in my talk. So the blueprint for conceptual amelioration has been devised by German philosopher Carnap in his framework for explicating concept that is presented as follows in his 47th book, Meaning and Necessity. The task of making more exact, a vague or not quite exact concept used in everyday life or in an earlier stage of scientific or logical development, or rather of replacing it by a newly constructed, more exact concept, belongs among the most important tasks of logical analysis and logical construction. We call this the task of explicating or of giving an explication for the earlier concept. So the idea here is to take an Carnapian explication as being some sort of default model for conceptual amelioration and to reboot it so as to obtain what I would call a procedural template method, which stands for a highly adaptable set of step-by-step instruction for the improvements of our conceptual toolkits. So how does that work? Which are these steps? I give them to you. First, a descriptive phase, during which you map the concepts that are available to you with a focus on the functions. Next, an evaluative phase, during which you assess the quality of your concepts with regard to the functions that they are meant to enable you to perform. And during that phase, what you come to be able to is to identify needs to be satisfied in terms of features to be improved, deficiencies to be fixed. Then you come to design a new concept, trying to satisfy the needs you have identified in the target concept by ameliorating its improvable features or fixing its deficiencies with the three strategies that are already mentioned, namely innovation, revision, and replacement. Then you test the efficacy of the newly designed concept in terms of cost and feasibility, And eventually, you may try to propagate the new concept with the aim of obtaining uptake for it. So against that background, conceptual engineering appears to be a normative project which aims to prescribe us with the concept we should use instead of merely describing the concept we do use as a matter of fact. But now you may ask, what are concepts in the end? And that's the last bit of my talk. So here you face an alternative between two options, a psychological option, a philosophical option. This alternative has been put forward by the philosopher of science, Edouard Machery, in his 2009 book, and I give you here a quote from the preface of his book, 2010. Also, philosophers and cognitive scientists use the term concept. They are not talking about the same things. Cognitive scientists are talking about a certain kind of bodies of knowledge, whereas philosophers are talking about that which allows people to have propositional attitudes. For reason I cannot develop here, my claim is that we should adopt the psychological model of concept for the very purposes of conceptual engineering, because it ensures a wider scope, a higher flexibility, and a stronger impact for the method of conceptual engineering on our conceptual toolkits. So on that picture, concepts are to be characterized as these bodies of information about some categories of reference, that is individuals, event types, substances, that are retrieved by default from our long-term memory in the processes that underlie the activation of our higher cognitive competencies, judgment making, analogy making, action planning, and so on. And what is important here is that this defaultness cognition can be operationalized via a set of properties, which then turns conceptual engineering into an experimentally assisted method with regard to the dead-time model that I presented you in the second section of our talk. And the upshot is then that conceptual engineering appears to be an applied project, which means to redelineate people's bodies of information about certain classes of reference in order to foster or to ensure better cognitive behavior and activity. So I wrap up here by making a case for why this may matter. So basically, on my picture, conceptual engineering appears to be some sort of project for refurbishing the mind. And you may then ask why. Here I give you two reasons that have been dubbed the master argument by Norwegian philosopher Herman Cappell. The first is a contingency claim, which states that the present state of our conceptual toolkits is the product of many contingencies, meaning that our concepts could have been developed otherwise. The second claim is a suboptimality claims, which consist in saying that the contingent present state of our conceptual toolkits is very unlikely to have an optimal fit with regard to the functions our concepts are meant to fulfill. And on these two grounds, the upshot is then that we should adopt a radical absolute skepticism towards our conceptual toolkits. And that was the meaning of Nietzsche's quote that I give you as an epigraph of this talk, namely that we should try to always critically assess and improve, if need be, each and every concept we use. And if you ask here why, once again, then I give you the following quote by Alexis Burgess and David Plunkett. Our conceptual tool repertoires determines not only what beliefs we can have, but also what hypotheses we can entertain, what desires we can form, what plans we can make on the basis of such mental states, and accordingly constrains what we can hope to accomplish in the world. Representation enables action from the most sophisticated scientific research to the most mundane household task. It influences our options within social political institutions and even helps determine which institutions are so much as thinkable. Our social role, in turn, helps determine what kinds of people we can be, what sorts of lives we can live. Conceptual choices and changes may be intrinsically interesting, but the clearest reason to care about them is just that their non-conceptual consequences are pervasive and profound. Thank you.